From time immemorial, transportation services have been an absolute necessity for businesses and governments to operate successfully. Businesses rely on transport systems to fulfill purchase orders. Likewise, people who need to move from one place to the other in a timely fashion also need transport. While consisting of several sectors, from airlines to marine and logistics, the industry is ultimately the backbone of any economy. Meanwhile, the Lagos State government issued public transport guidelines to operators and passengers to curb the spread of the coronavirus in buses, cabs, motor parks and garages in March 2020. The directive expects passenger spacing to be fully observed, such as 2 meters of a minimum distance between passengers. Still, concern arises in how feasible it is to achieve this minimum distance in a bus or on a tricycle, where these modes of transportation are far shorter than 2 meters. Well, joining us to discuss COVID-19, its outbreak, and the transportation industry in Lagos State is the Managing Director of Primero Services, Fola Tinubu. Good morning to you, Fola. Thank you for joining us. I have to say I've been looking forward to putting these issues to somebody in the industry, because I don't think I'm alone. I'm sure Indy will give his own thoughts on this, but as somebody walking the streets of Lagos, even for a small amount of time, if I look up and see a bus transporting, I don't see social distancing. People may absolutely have their face masks on, but those buses are packed to minimum. You won't have people standing up, but in terms of the seats, every single seat is occupied. Is that what's happening on Primero Services?
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Initially, when we started, Lagos State government said we should put 20 passengers per bus, but the economics was just not working. And we went back to Lagos State government and we showed them, and they agreed with us that we can put 42. As long as we open the windows, there's no AC. So all we do now is sitting, there's nobody standing, and we open the windows so there's a cross ventilation, and we urge everybody to wear mask. But before they board the buses, they wear the mask, but once they get on the buses, some of them will turn off the mask, or will take off the mask. So, but we are still insisting that everybody wear mask.
Well, we'll talk for your side and we'll talk for the commuters. Mm-hmm. So, having done the 20 to 42, it will be expected that if you did raise the price, you will crush it. But I gather that the masses are suffering because the prices have been increased. Is that true?
Well, look, remember, each bus carries normally 70 passengers, because even at the 42, we're still underutilizing the buses. And before the pandemic, we have been talking to Lagos State government for over a year, showing them our figures that the fares we're charging is not commensurate with our costs. And eventually they agreed, and that's why we increased the price. It was just coincidental that when we increased the price was when we went to 42. But we've been trying to get an increase for over a year.
But Fola, isn't that really wrong timing? Because in as much as you think or believe that you're suffering, I mean, what I mean by that is that, okay, your prices are not commensurate, it's affecting your business. But then the commuters themselves, some of them have lost their jobs. Some don't have, I mean, you talk about poverty. So isn't it really wrong timing, wrong thinking for you to begin to, at this time, I mean, shouldn't that be part of the price you have to pay as other sectors are paying prices because of COVID-19?
First of all, there's no good time to raise your price because nobody wants an increase. Secondly, our cost keeps going up. Nobody said, oh, it was a wrong time for Naira to lose value. Naira just went from 360 to about 460, 470 now. And nobody's talking about that because everything we buy is imported. We don't manufacture anything in this country. And the people selling to us are jacking up their prices. I'll give you one example. Before the pandemic, we were buying each tires at about 130,000 per tire. They are now about 170, 180,000. So nobody talks about that. Nobody worries about our cost. But what we are doing is to make sure the system actually lasts for a long time. Because if the system does not break even, eventually it will collapse. And the people that we're trying to protect are the ones that will get the brunt of it. Because what will happen is the transport fare will triple. But even with this increase, we still charge the lowest on that axis. We are still the lowest on that axis. So we have to make sure that we cover, at least break even. I'm telling you, even now, we're not charging the full commercial price.
One can understand, try to understand you defending yourself. It's understandable, but what I'm really wondering, for example, the travel and tours industry has been the hardest hit by this pandemic. I mean, Lufthansa had to cry to its government. They were spending the money they had, and the government said, don't worry, we'll help you, give you some money. So in as much as you're defending this, there are organizations, especially the travels and tours, that have really been the hardest hit. So one really does expect that with all that you've explained, that the commuters out there should have some, I don't know what to call it, palliative from your side, try to absorb. That's just what I'm trying to bring across.
You've said it yourself that, Lufthansa, London Transport, everything, the government came to their rescue. But unfortunately, Lagos State government is suffering right now. The Lagos State revenue has gone, the IGR has dropped, and even the secretary allocation has dropped. So Lagos State government cannot really come to our rescue. So we have to find a way. Even the airlines that just started now, they've all increased their prices. So I don't understand why people, don't talk about that, and everybody talks about buses. Look, if the system does not at least break even, it will eventually collapse. And if it does, it's the same people that we're saying we're working in their interest that will end up bearing the brunt, because the downforce would triple their prices, and they will have no choice but to pay. In the long run, this is good for everybody. It may be a pain in the short run, but in the long run, it's actually good, because as long as the system is available 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the price that we're charging is still the lowest on that axis. We're not even covering our cost right now. We're not charging the full commercial fare.
Fola, I wonder if you remember, it's been a few weeks since the last time I spoke to you on the phone. I was actually out on the streets of Lagos trying to get a bit more of the experience of the average commuter. We started with the Damfos in the motor parks, and then I gave you a call when we were trying to find out how we could get on upon Primero services so we can, again, understand how commuters are feeling. We weren't able to do so that day, but from the research that we were able to gather beforehand, we know that consumers have been feeling the pinch. And as you've said, everybody is feeling it. It is relative. It is a feeling that everyone is having to go through at this time because of the pandemic and because of the directives. People are trying to keep themselves safe. However, there is another issue fast approaching, that of the closure of the third mainland bridge, albeit temporarily, for quite a bit of time. So for passengers who are relying on public transport, can they expect another hike aboard Primero services?
No. We don't have a plan to increase our pricing, in the near future. We actually are working with Lagos State government to find ways around the Third Mainland Bridge closure, and it will create a big problem for Lagosians. But the bridge needs to be fixed, because if they don't fix the bridge, and God forbid it collapses, we're all going to be worse off. So it's a temporary pain, but we'll work around it. There's no plan for another increase right now. But let me say, whether we like it or not, we have to face these facts. As long as Naira keeps losing value and everything we use on the buses are imported, there's always a possibility of an increase because the manufacturers and the sellers, they don't, they are charging us full commercial price. I'll give you a good example. I think I was on your show last November, and I told you that we were bringing 6 months worth of parts so that, we will have parts to fix the buses and all that kind of stuff. When we did that in November, we paid about just under about 400 million for the parts. We've almost exhausted the parts now. We're trying to bring new ones. The same quantity, the same, we've not added a pin to it. They're now asking us to bring over 500 million. So we have to buy it because Naira's lost value. Until we start manufacturing things in this country and we start assembling things in this country, this is the problem we're all going to face.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, what's been the cost implication during this COVID era for the BRT and for other transporters? You've touched briefly on that. Would you want to expand on it?
Well, yes. Look, during the shutdown, because we shut down our operations completely, we did not bring a kobo in for almost 5 weeks. And one way or the other, we still find a way to keep all our staff, to pay our staff. People are laying off their staff right, left, and center, but we are not. And it's put a lot of strain on our finances because the last 3 months, our revenue, during the shutdown, our revenue was absolutely zero. And since we've been back now, even with the increase, our revenue is not where it used to be. So it's been the last 4 or 5 months has been very, very difficult on us. But one way or the other, we'll weather it. And we are not planning to lay off anybody.
That's good news.
That is very good news. I wonder if we could get a snapshot into the inner workings of Primero Services. If you could tell us how many employees you have, how many routes you service, just so we can understand the depth and the space in which Primero Services operates here in Lagos State. Could you give us that information?
Sure. The total number of people working on that project is about between 1,500 and 1,600 people. And even though it's a simple Ikorodu to TBS, but we've broken it down into different services. And in the AM, we run about 36 different routes. And in the afternoon, we run 34 different routes.
All right. I don't know whether you're going to be able to take this question. I just wanted to bring this in before, if you can take it. Otherwise, we'll come back from break. All right, Fola, we'll keep you on pause. When we get back, we'll continue. Stay with us. Very glad to have you back. You're still watching the morning show and we're still discussing with the Managing Director / CEO of the Primero Transport Services Limited, Fola Tinubu. Fola, you're still there. Yeah, something very key, very important, because it also borders on transportation. The fact that you mentioned it in passing, 24th July is just about 6 days from today. Today is 18th. The government is going to close down the Third Mainland Bridge. When you listen to people talk, and even myself, it's giving people heartbeat. It's putting their heart in their mouth. Because the traffic jam on the road now is something else, not to talk of when that bridge is closed. What are there provisions by BRT or the transport system? Have you discussed with government to, find a way to get around what is expected to be a harrowing experience for commuters when this bridge is closed?
Yes, like I said earlier, we're working with Lagos State government to find a way around it. First of all, the bridge is not being closed completely.
Yeah.
Because I think part of it will be open in the morning and part will be open in the PM. So it's not as if it's 100% closure. And if you remember, the government actually did this about 2 years ago or so, when they were fixing the bridge, and it worked. The problem we're having right now is that Lagos State government has embarked on a lot of road construction,
at the same time
right now. Yes, simultaneously right now, and it's creating a little problem. But to me, it's a good problem, because if they fix the road, eventually it will make everything faster, because we're all complaining about the roads before. Now they're fixing it, we're all complaining again.
No, one is thinking that they're taking too many things at the same time. For example, the Costain Bridge could have been fixed, and then the trailers, just line up there. In fact, each morning I traverse that route. No entry from cars coming this way. Trailers line up this way, right to, I think, Ijora side. And it's not a good sight. It's not good.
Well, I don't work for Lagos State.
I know.
I don't know their full rationale for doing what they're doing. They must have their reasons why they're doing it. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's the quicker they fix the road, the better for all of us in the long run.
That's it.
Yes, they're doing a lot of things simultaneously, but they have their reasons. They have their reasons. I don't know the exact the logic or the rationale behind it. You may need to call a Lagos State government official to explain it. But as far as I'm concerned, in the long run, it will be better for all of us. It's a temporary pain, but when the roads are fixed, it will be better for everybody using the road, and to make our commute a lot faster. We are working on the in preparation for the 4th mainland bridge. Part of what we are doing is trying to find a way to put more buses on the road, so that way we can carry more people. Unfortunately, because we're only putting 42 on the buses, we're more or less using 2 buses to do what 1 bus will do. So that is, that actually will affect us. But we are working around the clock trying to make sure we put more buses on the road, so that way will alleviate some of the problems.
Talking about alleviating some of the problems, are there any plans in place to expand the roads or the routes that for BRT buses and, of course, Primero services? If we were to look at geographical areas like the Badagry axis, for example, I'd imagine that is one of the issues that commuters are facing there. So if you could tell us about any plans in place to streamline those services to make it easier for more people to access your services, can you give us a bit more information on that?
Yes, Lagos State government actually have 14 BRT corridors planned. We're on the first one right now. The second one is the one they just finished now, which is Abule Egba to Oshodi. And we are going to be part of the people operating that one. I believe the third one is the one you just mentioned now, Okokomaiko all the way. They're working on the road. See, before we come, Lagos State have to put the infrastructure in place. We have made a commitment. As long as Lagos State permits and allow us, we'll bring buses for whatever corridor they put in place. But they have to put the infrastructure first before the buses come. So it's been done in a methodical way. But the Abule Egba to Oshodi, the buses should start running, I believe, if by sometime next month. By next month, the buses should start running there. And I think Lagos State envisaged that Okokomaiko, that Badagry axis, will probably be maybe the last quarter or first quarter of next year. The last quarter of this year, first quarter of next year. But you may need to speak to Lamata and Lagos State government for exact dates.
All right. Fola, what policy statements would you desire that government, both at the state and the federal level, make to encourage you guys in the industry, transport industry across the board, in the business, for more profit, for more growth, and, of course, for better services for the commuters as well?
Look, we all agree that the government cannot do this or cannot provide the buses by themselves. So they need private sector to deploy more resources into it. And the first thing they can do is actually find a way for us to get a single-digit interest rates. Because remember, I gave an example the other day that if you want to bring 100 buses to Lagos today, they're probably talking nothing less than $10 to $12 million. And if you convert that to naira, to naira, you are talking almost about 10 billion or so before you even hit the road. So the number one thing that they can do is to find a way for us to get single-digit interest rates. And the second is they need to keep on working on the infrastructure, because the roads, as long as the roads are not fixed, it affects us both in delaying the turnaround of the buses and also wear and tear on the buses. Believe it or not, every day we lose minimum 10 tires to the roads. So they need to help us with the infrastructure, and they need to help us with the single-digit interest rates.
Have you made proposals to the government on these policy statements you want from them?
Oh, definitely, both federal and state.
Do you have an idea of which one you'd be able to get or achieve first? Which one do you think will come first, the single-digit interest rates or the better roads?
Well, unfortunately for me, I'm not a magician, and I don't work for Lagos State or federal government, so I have to keep on lobbying and talking to them. But I'll say something now. This Lagos State President administration has been actually they are listening, and they are working with us and trying to find a way to make transportation easier. Because if you remember, that's one of the Governor Sanwo-Olu's agenda, the team agenda. The T stands for transportation, so he's actually very focused on it. And we've had a series of meetings with them, and we'll continue to engage them.
All right, Fola, just before we let you go, in the face of transport companies retrenching staff, of course, you've talked that you're not retrenching your staff, which is interesting news. Some cutting pay, too, to stay afloat. What are the real economic implications of COVID-19 to the travel industry? I mean, economic implications.
The economic implication is that, look, all over the world, the travel industry's revenue has been decimated because during the shutdown, all the travel, both air, land, and sea, nobody was moving. And if nobody's moving, there's no revenue to generate. So all over the world, the revenue has been decimated. Also, especially in our climate, because of the economic policy and the naira, our cost has gone up at the same time. Because, like I said earlier,
I'm so sorry, we have to interrupt you there. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for your time. That was, of course, Fola Tinubu, who is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Primero Transport Services Limited.